Okay, so today we're continuing on with exercise 216. This is the next part of your next assignment. It's the next part of assignment 202. Right now, I'm assuming that you've gotten through all the stepping sides on your topography from last class. If you haven't, you're behind today, so you have to finish that up. And today is the last day we're going to kind of be working on this. We're going to move into some different stuff next week. So I want you to kind of be done today. After today, you're going to be responsible for making an appointment and going and having your files laser cut in the laser cut room, which is across the way. And then you'll be responsible for assembling it. The whole thing is due a week from next Monday. So it's the Monday before spring break. I do that on purpose so that it's due before spring break, so you don't have to worry about it during spring break or whatever. Okay? I will walk through either later today or on Monday how to glue it together after you've cut it, because I think it's useful for you guys to see somebody glue it together, and kind of the tricks of how that goes together. It depends on how many questions you have today as to whether I do it today or whether I do it on Monday. So you'll see it nonetheless, but we'll play that out as it goes along. Okay, so I have a file that I finished the stepping sides on, and I'll work from there today. So I didn't want you to have to watch me go through it. So I have a file that's basically finished. This is what I'm expecting you to have today for where we're going forward. Couple of the key things to point out: I have a couple valleys here that go down, over, and back up. Right, same thing happens up above here. I don't know if I have any hills. I don't think I do. That would do the opposite, but I need to make sure that those are correct. The other thing that I want to do is I want to pay some special attention to how the edges of this end. And I've gone ahead and I've already finished the edges, but I'm going to look at each corner here. And so on this last contour, I need to make sure that these two, this is the highest point, these two meet at a corner. Right? If I come over to this corner, right, notice that there isn't a step directly in the corner. There's a step back here, but I should come up, go to the corner, turn the corner, and then go up to the next contour. Right? Likewise, at this corner, this is again a high corner. I'm coming up. I have one step at the end, and it goes over and back across, and then down again. Okay? When we go over here to this low corner, I was really lucky when I set up these contours in that I have a contour right at the corner. So in this case, there is a step there, but it's not always going to happen that way. Right? And then we come down across those, and then we get back up to the original corner. So I want to make sure that these are looking correct. I have it with my three-dimensional topo lines that have been cut, so I can really visualize this and make sure that it looks the way it should. I have turned off the terrain piece, right? That would be my terrain. If you get lost, right, you can confirm that it works by turning the terrain back on and saying, yes, these line up the way it should. Right? But I'll go ahead and turn those off for clarity purpose. And now it's a matter of starting to create the rest of this and getting it ready for laser cutting. So in an ideal world, what I want there to be one continuous joined line that goes all the way from one corner up to the other corner. Right? So the steps are a continuous line like that, and these steps are also a continuous line, and these steps there are a continuous line. Okay? That's an ideal world. Now, when I create the sides of this object, right, I have to think about how deep the side should be. The minimum, right, is usually a couple thicknesses of contours below whatever your lowest point is. I guess in this case it's one contour below. Generally, I like it to be a little bit thicker. It just makes it a little easier to work with. So it is, in fact, kind of an arbitrary number. And so what I'll do is I'll start at this corner here, right, and I'm going to draw a line straight down. Remember, I can't do it in this orientation because my UCS is set up. Or excuse me, that's UCS is AutoCAD. My C-plane is set up in the regular X and Y plane. So I'm going to do it in either the front view or the right view. And I'm just going to set this down some distance below the lowest point on my model, which is right there. And then I can come back to the perspective view. And I'm going to leave a line kind of long floating out there in space. And then I'll come to this line here and I'll make sure that perpendicular snap is on, and I'll snap to perpendicular, right, like that. And then I need to trim off that part of the line, so I'll type trim, get rid of that. And so what I've done is I've effectively created, right, the first side of this particular piece. Okay? Now I need to do the remaining sides, so I'll continue again with my polyline tool. I'll draw a line out this way. I'll use my perpendicular snap to snap down, and I'll trim off the excess. Okay. Now, one of the other things that's useful down the road is to go ahead and join each side. So if I took these and that, and I type join, right, those would be one side. Right, now I don't have a line on the edge here, so I'm going to do one new line. There, and let's select that, this, and this. And we'll type join. And this just helps for being able to work with these objects down the road. Okay. We'll do another one where I'll come straight across. Again, I have ortho on so that I know that these are coming in straight lines. Perpendicular, I'll trim. And then let's join. Perfect. And then I have the last piece right here. Oh, I need these sides too. So we'll take this, and this, and this, and that one, and I'll join those as well. Alright, so now I have the four sides of the model, right? And I did bring this back. It got dented in my office, but the concept is still the same, right? So I have the four sides now, right, established. Now I have to start thinking of this as if I'm going to laser cut it, I'm going to need to fold these pieces flat so that I can actually cut them out, okay? And we have two different strategies for folding it. The key is that it has to be consistent. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Rotate 3D to rotate these flat. And so I'll type rotate 3D, and I'm going to rotate this first one along this axis so that it's flat. The key is that I just want to be consistent. So if I fold these out, all of them are going to fold out. Right? And I'll work my way around my object. And there they are, folded out. Okay, so I have those pieces folded out. Now I also need the topo lines, right, to be flat. So just like we did before where we projected those topo lines, I'm going to do the same thing. So in the meantime, let me go ahead and move these out of the way so we can see it a little bit clearer. I'm going to move. All right, and I'll create a temporary flat surface. And I know that ultimately these are going to be on some laser cut layers, so I'm going to go ahead and create some layers. I'll create a layer called laser cut, and I'm going to create a sublayer for engrave and a sublayer for cut. Perfect. And so we'll make the cut layer active for right now. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to project all of those lines onto this flat surface. So let me go ahead, go into my top view here, and I'm going to project onto the flat surface there. And now I'll have a flat set of lines, which we can see there. I'm going to go ahead and move those lines off in space. Okay, so this stuff over here, I can delete that plane for a little bit. This is relevant but not so critical. These are the two pieces that I'm going to ultimately use for cutting out my model. Okay, and so let me go ahead and I'm going to turn off. Oops. Let me move these onto the cut layer. And we'll turn off the unnecessary things. Okay, so now right? I have my topo lines, I have my sides ready to be cut, and what I need to do is I need to set these up to be laser cut. And so there's going to be a few things involved in doing this, and you'll just have to bear with me while we work our way through it. Okay? So first thing is I'm ultimately going to need 2 copies of the topography, because I'm going to do 2 different cuts and then stagger or stack the deck, so to speak, to be able to create this staggered effect. Okay? So I'll take these objects here, and I'm going to copy them, and I'll move them over, so I end up with 2 copies. Right? And we can actually at this point start working just in the top view, because there's nothing in 3D anymore to see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start changing the layers. Right now everything is on the cut layer, and I can show that by changing the color of the cut layer. So I'm going to go ahead and this is something that will benefit when we laser cut later on. I'm going to change the cut layer's color to be red. And I'm going to pick actually red from this list, because that represents cutting when we move over to the laser cutter. So I'll pick that as red. The engraved layer here I'm going to pick as blue. Right? And I'll say, okay, so now I have an engraved that's blue and a cut that's red. And so I'll start with this first set of topo lines. I'll start at the lowest point, right? And I'm going to click it and select it. Then I'm going to work my way up the set of topography, and this may involve some double checking with the model, depending on how much undulation you have in your terrain, is that I want to select every other line. Right? And obviously I made it to that, so I'm going to continue off this direction here. And my slope was relatively consistent, so it was fairly easy to pick every other line. Did I skip one? Thank you. I knew somebody would catch me if I did it wrong, right? So now I have those lines selected, and I'm going to change the layer so that they're on the engraved layer. Right? So when I look at it now, I have a red and blue set. Okay? Now I'm going to come to this one, and I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to pick this line and go up the set of contours. So I'll hold down Shift, and I'll pick every other line, and you guys will catch me if I screw this up. There. And I'm going to change those objects to be on the engraved layer. So I'll change object layer. Okay? So I end up with 2 that look identical, but they've actually alternated. So you start cutting in one, right, so that every other one. Okay? Now the next piece is that I need to actually cut these pieces out. So I'm going to create a rectangle that goes all the way around the sides of these. So we'll be on the cut layer again, and I'm going to create a rectangle. It's just a standard rectangle. Like that, so that that's going to be cut out. I'll do the same thing on this side. Come on. There we go. So I have these 2 ready, right? All of my sides are already on the cut layer because they're going to be cut out. Now, if we think about these sides for just a second, right? If we imagine gluing it together, there's going to be a point, right, where there's a thickness assigned, right? And so right now if I were to cut this out, the pieces that I would cut out go all the way to the corner, right? So what I need to do is I need to pick 2 opposing pieces, whether it's this piece and this piece, or this piece and this piece, and I need to subtract off the thickness of one of my contours, okay? And so I'll do these larger ones for right now, okay? And so what I'll do is I'll create a polyline, right? And I wish I remembered what size this was. Let me just measure really quick. Oh, let me. All right, it's 15'7½". Actually, let's put that in decimal form. It's a little bit easier. My mouse isn't. Okay, so it's 15.625 feet. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'll use my polyline tool. Why is my mouse not working anymore? I'll use this. We'll go over 15.625 feet. And I'll draw a line. And I'll do the same thing from here. We're going to go over 15.625 feet. And I'll draw a line straight up. We can then mirror these, save myself a little bit of time, to the other side. And then I need to trim off part of this. So we use this object as a trim for that piece. We use this object as a trim for that piece. Oops. There we go. Trim off these two pieces. Right, same thing here. Oops. That one's not long enough. We'll get rid of this and this. This is just to allow us enough space to actually glue the pieces together. Okay? If you forget to do this part of it, it's not a big deal. After you laser cut, you can take a knife and you can cut off that amount when you go to glue it together. If you wanted the corners not to overlap, you could miter the corners if you really wanted to. Right? I'm not requiring that. I have those things set up. I've subtracted off the thickness of the contour, which is basically the thickness of the cardboard. Right? And so now I have these shapes ready to go. Unfortunately, they're still at full scale. So I need now to scale the whole thing down to be able to work with them. The good news is I know that I created this as 11 by 17. Right? So the scaling is really easy. I'm going to select my objects. I'm going to type scale. It's not scale 1D, it's just a standard scale. I'll pick one corner here, and I'll go to this corner. I know that this needs to be 17 inches, so I'll type 17 inches. I'll hit enter. It gets really, really small. So at this point, zoom, Z followed by E for extents will show what I have. It could be S for selected, so that I get these objects. Now these are in the correct scale to go laser cut. Okay? So to further prep the file and to make laser cutting easy, right, I'm going to again create a couple rectangles. This time I'm going to create rectangles that represent the size of the bed of the laser cutter or the size of the media that I plan to use, right? And so that's 12 by 24, 12 inches by 24 inches. So I'll say at 24 inches, comma 12 inches, right? And so that represents the size of the laser cutter bed, the maximum size. I'm assuming right now that the piece of cardboard that I'm going to put in is the maximum size, right? And so I may need more than one of these rectangles to be able to fit all of my objects. Okay? So we'll start with this first object. I'll say move. Right? We'll move it to fit inside. Right? I don't put it right on one of the edges. I put it slightly in the middle because you don't know exactly how the laser cutter is going to cut. It's easier to cut the piece out. Right? We'll do the same thing with this one. Say move. I'll put this one there as well. All right, so then this piece, right, I want to keep the orientation the same if I can, right? I definitely don't want to flip it, but if I work at it, I can probably fit this one onto this piece, right there, and I can maybe fit this one onto that piece. No, it's not going to fit. So we'll see if we can fit it here. Right, these pieces I should probably join together, so we'll join, We'll see if we can fit this on a piece. Not quite, but it'll fit right there. And so I'm not being particularly efficient. Looks like I'm going to need one more sheet. And we'll move this one up onto that sheet. Right? So it doesn't matter what sheets these end up going on, they just have to fit on a sheet. Okay? And so in this case, it's an extra sheet, though I end up having to buy 2 pieces of cardboard from the store anyway, so the fact that I went onto an extra sheet really isn't that big of a deal. And so each sheet that you buy at the student store will do 2 of these laser cutter beds, right? So the one sheet at the store will do this one and this one, the second sheet will do this one and this one, okay? So I have those files all established, ready to go, right? So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select these objects and I'm going to export them as AutoCAD. The one thing that you can't do in Rhino is establish the line weight. And that's something that luckily you can do over on the lab computer right before you laser cut. It's the only thing that you can do over there, right? You can't move the objects, you can't change anything because it's designed just to do cutting over there. So you can, however, change the line weight. So we're in good shape there. So with all of these selected, I'm going to go to File, Export Selected, and I'm going to specify AutoCAD as my export format. And this is what we're going to actually do the cutting in over there. Okay? So we'll call this, Topo Laser Cut or something like that. I'll go ahead and click Save. When I do that, it's going to ask me what export options I want. Pick 2004 polylines. Right? Really, it doesn't matter. It could be any of the export options. It's fine. And I'll go ahead and say OK. Okay? This creates the file that you need to go laser cut. And so the purpose today, of the exercise, is to actually get this such that you could go laser cut your file. Okay? And I'm trying to do this as much in class as possible, so if you run into any questions or whatever, you can ask me. Okay? Yeah.
So when you created one file for 2 files for cutting the contour, like
the alternating ones.
Yeah. The size we have, the way you describe, we have one step for every contour. But the way you're going to glue is going to be every 2 steps. And
look at this one on the sides. I understand, but spend a little bit of time looking at this one, and you'll understand why it works. Because of how they layer. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to come around and I'll answer your questions right now. Are there any questions globally about this? Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, you said alternating and that it depended on the contours of your, so how
right.
do they need to match on
So,
levels?
no, what ends up being kind of critical is for you to be able to look at the actual surface, and if you have a surface that goes like up and down, you have to understand where the high point is and then where it goes back down, because the alternates will go back down and go back up, depending. So you can get a little bit lost. If you get in a sticky point, just call me over and we'll look at it and decide which direction they should be. Okay?